South Africa is in for another wild week because President Ramaphosa and his delegation have pulled off a real coup, to be honest, in getting a meeting with Donald Trump, President of the United States, on Wednesday. That's tomorrow. And it is going to be a huge meeting that will almost certainly affect the relations between the United States and South Africa, which, let's be honest, are already deeply troubled. We have the 49/57/58/ for some reason, we don't actually know exactly how many refugees who have now been in America for like a week. We have found out how privileged a lot of them are. American, or at least MAGA America, the government continues to insist that there are terrible things happening in South Africa, even though they demonstrably aren't, and the rest of the world agrees with us that they demonstrably aren't. And many Americans in the last week have now woken up to the fact that there aren't terrible things happening in a targeted way towards farmers and white people in South Africa. And so this meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump happens at a real tender moment where Trump could double down. He could become aggravated as Ramaphosa disagrees with him. And the people in the delegation, there's a lot of potential for people in that delegation to potentially cause more heartburn for MAGA America, including Special Envoy Nabisi Jonas and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen. So let's talk about all of that. How is this meeting likely to go? Will this meeting help South Africa's cause, or will it exacerbate frustration with an anger towards South Africa from America? And could it go the kind of interview version of nuclear the way it did for Zelensky when the Ukrainian president met Trump? Let's get into it. So firstly, I have to say it's kind of wild that Trump has taken this meeting. Don't you find it kind of wild that he's taken the meeting at all? He has spent the last 4 months absolutely casting South Africa as a terrible zone, white genocide, targeted farm murders. He's created an accelerated refugee program for, it seems like, largely privileged white South Africans based on the interviews that we've seen. Some of them who aren't even Afrikaners, like our dear Errol from South KZN, who, I mean, it is just so devastating for this one refugee, Errol, that neighbors got interviewed by a big South African media house and said that he was the worst, that he was a grifter and a charlatan and running a failing IT business. And that means that we probably now suspect that he's gone to America to escape his debts. But it's kind of wild that this meeting is happening at all, because Trump doesn't just do meetings. And he has spent the last 4 months insisting that terrible things are happening to South Africa, using us as an example, and probably working it into his whole narrative about trying to save white people from the evils of other people, while shutting down all these refugee programs, as we've reported on, who have legitimately fled disaster, oppression, famine, terror, all of these black and brown people who really need help. The fact that he's doing this meeting, I'm not even sure why he's doing the meeting, given all of this. I'm not sure what Trump sees in this, besides maybe an opportunity to try and attack our president and humiliate him the way he did with Zelensky.
So here's my thoughts on it, Dan. I think that there's been this weird culture shift where maybe you've seen it, like it's on all social media, it's on streamers, all that kind of stuff, where we've gotten into this style of debate politics, and specifically like debate style content,
right?
Where somebody will sit down. You've probably seen random TikToks and stuff where someone like they're a MAGA American, they sit down and they try and own all the libs, you know what I mean? And then there's just like 20 people that come up straight after each other to try and, you know,
person destroys, person humiliates.
And I feel like we've gotten into this weird bubble of that kind of content, and it's everywhere, to the point where I think somebody's told Trump that like he is good at it, because it's so subjective though. And my problem with that whole style of content is that the way it plays out, rather than a real debate, is that it basically just comes down to who's loudest. And so, which you will often find with right-wing kind of people or MAGA people.
And then they'll clip stuff out of context. Of course, it was wild to see the differing coverage from right-wing and left-wing media and centrist media about Zelensky.
Specifically, I was going to get there. I mean, like, I think depending on who you ask, you'll have different victors from that debate, if you will. You know, it's that style of content though, right? It's the same thing that I feel when I think about how far and wide this meeting has spread online.
Totally.
You know, if you start looking at Twitter, for example, the amount of people that think like America's going to own South Africa and like cut through their fake news and all this stuff. And then the other side, that's the complete opposite side.
Totally.
And I just think it's a really weird space that we're in right now. And I really hate that style of content. Again, because it's not an actual debate. Nobody wins these debates. There isn't factual evidence from both sides. It's just who's loudest.
Exactly what I was going to say next is that nobody believes in their right mind that Trump is going to be persuaded. And I don't think Ramaphosa's team are going across there truly believing that they're going to show Trump the light. He is not there to be shown that he was wrong. He famously doesn't believe he has ever been wrong. And he famously misremembers or willfully remembers things or changes the context of things to prove to himself that he has never been wrong about anything before. And he is definitely not going to show himself to be proven wrong about the plight alleged of white South Africans. There is no world in which that's going to happen. And as much as Ramaphosa and his delegation and other South African leaders have said that they are going across to try and persuade and show the truth to the Americans and find an amicable solution, there is not going to be any outcome where Trump goes, oh, psych, I was wrong. Thank you so much for clarifying. Send back those morons from last week, from Alabama or wherever they are. That's just not going to happen. And you need to remember that this is going to be one of those performance politics moments, performance art moments, where unless something changes in the next 24 hours, this meeting is going to happen live in front of a set of cameras. It's going to be streamed on American, South African, and the world media. So it's going to be, like with Zelensky, a performance of power and dominance, not a quiet little negotiation of like, what do you think about this? But we have evidence of this. And when Trump and co. get in front of the cameras, they are performing. They are TV people who want to dominate and need to win. And the thing with the Zelensky thing was, as soon as Trump and J.D. Vance, the vice president, felt disrespected or felt like they had an in to show that Zelensky was not behaving properly, they attack-dogged Zelensky, who was then provoked and reacted. So I think if that kind of situation arises, and the Ramaphosa situation is going to be different because Ramaphosa and Zelensky are very different in their presentation style, but because of the live media and the fact that the Trump administration has now started banning and uninviting media who are sometimes critical of him from press briefings and stacking those press briefings with sometimes social media influencers who are MAGA supporters to ask softball questions or Trump supportive questions, and also American media who very clearly pushes the propagandized positions of Trump, the far right and the alt-right American media. So we need to understand that Trump's going to be there live on TV. His acolytes are going to be there, his cronies live on TV, the Marco Rubios, the J.D. Vances who have tweeted nonsense and disinformation about South Africa. And they're going to have American media there who have perpetuated the lies and falsehoods about South Africa and supported this absurd refugee program. That is the room that Ramaphosa and his delegation are going into. So what's probably going to happen? We need to talk a little bit about how, in response to this, Ramaphosa is likely to fare. There are a few things that we all know about President Ramaphosa. Firstly, he's an extremely capable diplomat. He knows how to meet people, shake their hands, smile, be soft-spoken, be calm, not get provoked, and not rise. Do you remember all those videos of him being confronted by politicians in the South African parliament when he was vice president, trying to get a rise out of him? He has such incredible self-control, and no matter how you feel about him, he exudes such dignity that it is very unlikely that Trump and co. will get a Zelensky-style provocation, raised voice, visible upset emotion out of Cyril Ramaphosa. In one way, that makes him incredibly, incredibly well-suited to walking into this room. On the other hand, though, it could provoke an escalation from the Americans because when they see they're not getting a rise out of him, they will double down. They will scream louder. They will try to overwhelm him. They will try to speak over him and have him speak as little as possible and be disagreed with as much as possible so that their quotes dominate and they get those viral clip moments. So we don't know yet whether Ramaphosa's acumen as a very diplomatic figure will stand him actually ironically in better or worse stead in this situation. What we do know is that he is going to stand up for South Africa and the truth, and he is going to openly say that he has a differing opinion on, which is a polite version for saying, I disagree with you on what is really happening in South Africa. And it's going to come down to how the Americans respond to that. So Ramaphosa is a serious operator. And respectfully, or maybe disrespectfully, I don't care whether or not the MAGA Americans think I respect them. But I'm just kind of amused by how they probably think that this is going to be the hardest big shock meeting, the hardest thing Ramaphosa's ever had to face.
Yeah.
And bro, you're not top 10 what Ramaphosa has had to negotiate. The struggle, the unions, internal ANC politics in the 90s, big business, getting back into ANC politics, Zuma's crowd in the ANC who were in power, and he pulled off a coup to like get them out of power, to become president, stay president, maintain popularity in South Africa as the ANC stock has plummeted. He's still the most popular and like votable for politician by all the big data in South Africa. I'm sorry, but he's probably not even sweating about this. He has probably calculated exactly what's likely to happen, gamed the worst and best case scenarios, and figured out that this is worth it for him. And so I'm really interested. And he's been quite bold with his delegation because John Steenhuisen has been taken along. He's agriculture minister. Makes sense to take along the agriculture minister. The Agoa trade deal is very important to a lot of South African agriculture, particularly our citrus crops, gives us preferential market access to the American market. But it's also relevant because Trump has continually shouted about farmers in South Africa being in such awful danger. And so no matter who the agriculture minister is, it makes sense to take him. But the fact that he's a white man, it's literally waving a red cape in front of a bull in the Spanish style. It's like MAGA America is going to see John Steenhuisen and see John Steenhuisen telling them that they're wrong, that they were misguided to take all of these Afrikaner refugees, that the refugees were misguided to accept this refugee program and move to America. I really think it's quite likely he's going to end up, John Steenhuisen on Fox News, being called a race traitor. But it's the cognitive dissonance for MAGA America to see this white dude saying, nah, guys, you're wrong. Chill out about what's actually happening in South Africa is going to be crazy. It's also the fact that he's the leader of, look, they're in the GNU, but the DA, in many ways, it's the second biggest political party in South Africa, and it's created itself in opposition to the ANC. So it's going to make it harder for the Americans to say this government and to pigeonhole the South African government as just the African National Congress full of black people, when the DA, dominated by white leaders, is also in government and is also saying the MAGA Americans are wrong. But then the other person in the delegation who's super interesting is Mcebisi Jonas, because he was appointed special envoy for South Africa to the United States of America after our previous ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool, was kicked out of America when it was discovered that he had criticized and spoken out against Trump in a recorded interview for the Mapungubwe Institute, MISTRA, a little while ago, some years ago now. And straight after Jonas was appointed, the far right in America found a recording of Jonas speaking it was the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation lecture, I think, where he was also criticizing, slamming, and condemning Trump and Trump's style of politics. Jonas is going to be there too. And the right wing in America is primed on Mcebisi Jonas. So I think that no matter what happens, no matter how this interview goes, this meeting goes, it's going to be a firestorm in the next few days. And remember, we also have the casual matter of the fact that South Africa is probably finally going to get a budget on Wednesday also. So
exciting times.
I know, dude. Thursday's show, I don't even know how we're going to do it. Thursday's show is going to be crazy. But we will be here for you, of course. The Quarter Report every Tuesday to Friday. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Join us on the WhatsApp line 0607-613-436. Become a recorder. We, of course, play out your voice notes and your messages and have dialogue about what's going on in South Africa on the podcast version of this show. And wherever you're watching or listening, remember, we are live on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Good luck, South Africa. It's about to get wild. Wear tight socks. Chat tomorrow.